That's much better. Much better, much
Ladies
better.
and gentlemen, our stream is live. Let's stop talking about what we do to the squirrels when the seagulls are not looking. That's private information.
Ooh, that sounds like a second
Seagulls
season of What We Do in the Shadows.
My God, that's a good drink. Holy cats. I can't wait to talk about this. Whatever this
I
is.
can't even tell you. It's
whatever the hell this is. It's
something I pulled off an index card because I didn't have everything to make the Queens.
You know
Although
what,
I do like a Bronx
did.
cheer.
You know how they keep notes for porn movies?
Uh-huh.
On Skindex cards.
Oh,
What?
Lord. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Here we go.
All right, can we start over again, please?
I was not ready.
I see we have some Facebook peoples in his house. Let's go ahead and here's baby. You can reach this here. There. Everything is set. Everything is set. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you tuned in on time because you're a bunch of punctual MFers, and we respect your ability to manage a schedule. But we're going to hold off for just a couple of minutes while some other people come in.
There it is.
So if you are just tuning in, seeing the alert on Facebook Live that my mug is there, we're about to go live for StorySmack.
We got a dozen folks out there waiting.
Nelson McClintock. Hello. How are you? Richard, what's up? All right, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see up on the screen, we are completely free from infection. This is Coming to America. Got volume there. Cool. And boy, it looks like all Facebook all day today. So let's go ahead and get into it. You ready, babe?
Yeah, is everything else turned on? Yeah.
I think.
Well, yeah, we got a YouTube, we got a Twitch, we got a couple 2-3 Twitchers.
It's a 0.
Oh, I need to get my glasses checked.
There's a number there. It must mean people.
It must mean people.
I'm very far away from that screen.
Dominic, Mike, here we go. 3, 2, 1, and hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. It is a gorgeous day here in San Diego, California. Granted, most days in San Diego, California are gorgeous. Today is more gorgeous than some of the other days. How you doing, baby?
I'm okay. How are you?
We did not give our warm salutations. I like your hair.
Well, thanks.
Great.
I just got it did, which is crazy. It's crazy to talk about in the in this new world. But I went and got my hair did, and I'm very happy about it.
Got your hair did. Now, we are going to start our the podcast part of the show in a second. But for now, everybody, let's say hello to Empty Set Movie Maven, Rob Otto.
Hey, Robbie.
Hello. You know, after hearing that A got her hair did, I realized I didn't get mine did. So I think I should clean mine up a little bit here. You know, I've been growing this since I was a child. And I'll just clean that up a little bit. There you go.
Nice and neat.
That'll be $8.
Baby, vamp for a second. Let me open the door. It's hot.
All right, I'm definitely vamping because it is definitely hot in here. Yeah, you know, it's a crazy thing. I think we actually discussed your haircut the last time on this show, and I don't do a lot to my hair, you know, except maybe fix the color or whatever. And it was crazy. I had to like negotiate with myself to go actually sit in the salon. And I'm very lucky that the guy who does my hair has been a friend of mine for 20 something years. We've traveled together. I can be pretty frank with him, and he was like, "We'll do anything you want, but I mean, all of my licensing is about safety and prevention of infection." So. And it worked out great.
Completely free from infection. Now we're
I was running back today. In.
Well,
hey, Julie, nice to see you out there. Thank you. I'm so
Baby,
excited.
are you ready to, we got a bunch of people on Facebook, one on YouTube, one on Twitch. That's all good because we're going to have some fun, talk about one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
We also have Akeem. Akeem has joined us. Love this movie. Baby, we're ready to start this podcast?
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get Rob off the screen so we can bring Rob back on the screen the way it should be done. And...
This is StorySmack, a podcast about stories and storytellers in the world of pop culture. This week, we're discussing the 1998 comedy classic, Coming to America. FDO, can you give us the movie guide?
Well, let me introduce myself first. I am Scott Sigler, #1 New York Times best-selling author, and I was... You know how old I was?
I don't.
I was 137 when Rocky Marciano whooped my ass.
We should also bring in our lovely co-host, I think.
Yes, we should. Empty Set Movie Maven and Archduke of Western Zamunda, Rob Otto. Hello, Sir Royalty. How are you?
Hello. Greetings from lovely Zamunda. It's so wonderful to see everyone. Couple things. I've got an announcement to make. I know I didn't warn you about this, but I have accepted a professorship at the cinematic department of the University of the United States. It's a very small school. It doesn't even have a basketball team. And the other announcement I have to make, which I should have warned you about, is that the royal penis is clean.
The royal penis is clean. Now, Rob, you sent us a recipe for a drink you're having.
Yes.
Which is delicious drink, but I didn't have all the ingredients, so we're not having it. What is it? Tell us about it.
So this is actually, since of course we are going to the best place to find a queen for a royal king, the Burrow of Queens. This was a drink called the Queens. So
Nice.
yes, it's gin, it's vermouth, it's just a splash of wonderful grapefruit juice or pineapple juice,
Pineapple
and it
juice,
is
yeah.
Delish.
it is lovely. And look, I'm so fancy.
Oh,
I'm umbrella in
fancy
there.
umbrella. Baby, tell people
Vacation
what,
in lovely Zamunda.
Tell people what we're drinking.
We're
And
drinking
if you guys are drinking at home, whether it be a alcoholic beverage, non-alcoholic, any variety, we say cheers to you.
Cheers. We are drinking what's called a oh Jesus! It's not a Cinema Parisi, Parisio. It's something else from Shaker and Spoon. But I wasn't prepared, so I have no idea what it is. It's grapefruit and citrus and
Sounds
yummy.
delicious.
I know. I'm not. It's a vodka drink with grapefruit. Yay!
Rob, you've got some congratulations on your professorship in the chat room. And also,
Excellent.
Dominic wants to congratulate you on your clean penis.
Yeah.
That is very nice. Excellent.
All right.
So
I'd
how
like
about
to say
now?
that's the first time Dominic thanked me on my clean penis, but I would hate to lie.
Mr. Sigler, can you give us the movie dude?
Yes, I can.
Trailer
Yes, I can.
pitch.
Immersed in luxury and riches, the Courteous. I wrote the damn thing
courteous.
down.
Courteous.
Courteous?
Yeah.
I think it's courteous because he's from royal court.
Definitely courteous.
Let's
Say
do
a
it again.
different word.
Here we go. Immersed in luxury and riches. Immersed in luxury and riches, the rich as hell blue blood and refined heir apparent to Africa's prosperous kingdom of Zamunda, Prince Akeem, summons up the courage to reject an arranged marriage proposal on his 21st birthday. Bent on finding true love, the young aristocrat, along with his trusted valet, Semi, find themselves in the strange and unknown urban jungle of New York City's Queens, trying to mingle with their neighbors by posing as humble exchange students. More than anything in the world, the noble prince yearns to be loved for what he is, and not for his title. However, can he find his soulmate in the bustling Big Apple? There we go. It took me 3 tries, but I got through it. That's the way it goes. All right, let's get into the nitty gritty of this. One of my favorite movies. I love it, and let's see how it did financially. AK.
So, Coming to America, this we'll talk about where in everybody's career this movie took place. The director, the writer, Eddie Murphy, Arsenio Hall, all that jazz. And I will say that this came in with a budget of $36 million to make in 1988, which is nothing to sneeze at back in 1988. That would have been an $80 million budget in today's dollars. So it was absolutely an expensive movie to make. Mm-hmm. But that gamble paid off, but banking on Eddie Murphy definitely paid off because in its opening weekend, it earned $21.4 million, which went on and eventually went on to make $128 million worldwide, which in today's dollars is $285.5 million. So it absolutely was profitable and ready to go. Overall, it ranks as the 240th on the box office, U.S. box office adjusted for inflation chart of all time. So
That's pretty big.
That's a pretty big movie, yeah. And it absolutely was a hit.
Now, I initially, A was busy this week, so I did some of the script, and I accidentally put in $284 million and then adjusted that for inflation. And I'm like, Coming to America made $1 billion? That's like Avengers money. That's insane.
That was in Zamunda dollars. That must have been what that was. He has his own money.
He in his own money. Rob, real quick, your high-level general thoughts on Coming to America.
We didn't know this at the time, but this would actually end up being the peak of Eddie Murphy's career. He was the absolute king of comedy through the 80s. He was a huge bankable star, and some movies from the 80s you can't go back and watch and appreciate them.
That's true.
And this is not one of them. This is a movie you can watch again and again and again. It is just really well done, and even the cultural references of the time still make you laugh and still make sense.
Yeah. AK, how about you?
I don't disagree. I think it was a lot easier to phone in a sort of a culture clashy movie back then. We literally talked about it on the last StorySmack or maybe we talked about it offline, that there are a lot of 80s movies that we love as 80s kids that we can never watch.
Can't watch them.
And Coming to America is absolutely not one of them. I was telling Scott when we were watching it, I wonder if, even back in 1988, I brought up Black Panther, which came out just a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of discussion around Black Panther having to be sort of twice as perfect in every regard. Like the script had to be perfect, the scenes the cinematography had to be perfect. And I argue that maybe that was true in 1988 because, there's the royal penis is clean, which could have been super salacious and a really off-color joke about the woman. Mm-hmm. And yet it wasn't. It was this perfect, it wasn't salacious at all. It was just a note for Prince Hakeem, I can't even wipe my own business. Come on now, something has to change, and I love that about it, and I'm glad that we have a couple of instances of this, especially such a well-made movie. That's what I love so much. It's so well written. It's so well made.
Done. Yeah. And my overall thoughts are this was a celebration of a incredible young talent who had risen through the ranks, had a lot of success on SNL, and then the amount of power Eddie Murphy had to make the movie he wanted to make, playing all the different roles, the vastly majority black cast. He got to make all of these decisions because he had earned that right with his box office cred and his creative genius and brilliance, and he got to make this movie pretty much the way he wanted to make it, and I think that's wonderful. As a creator myself, that's wonderful.
And we've seen a couple of artists over the last, especially recently with StorySmack, that have lasted for a long time and their career has shifted and changed. And that's true of Eddie Murphy too. I don't disagree that this was among the height of his power at the box office, but he did great. He pivoted into dad movies, and he's still a great, huge, giant star who makes wonderful movies and a ton of money.
Today.
Yeah. Yep.
And speaking of Mr. Eddie Murphy, Rob, let me get the actors up here, and let me get the cast pictures. Boom. Tell us about Eddie Murphy at the height of his power.
Yeah, Edward Regan Murphy was just the king of comedy in the 80s. And at the beginning of the 80s, we didn't know it. A lot of people thought it was going to be Joe Piscopo, who was, the guy that was right with Eddie Murphy that helped revive the third incarnation of Saturday Night Live. The two of them were absolutely huge. But I don't know if Eddie had the drive, if he had the look, he had the laugh, he had the smile, whatever it was. He broke through much bigger than Joe Piscopo ever did. And, Eddie, it starts with, his comedy movie, Delirious, and then he's in 48 Hours, which is a huge smash. So people start thinking, okay, this guy's a movie star. Then he does a movie with Dudley Moore called Best Defense. Yeah, and it was a huge mistake. It was an awful movie, and everybody's like, well, that's it. Joe Piscopo had his one movie and he's not doing anything. Now the same thing happened to Eddie Murphy. I remember actually at the time, Eddie Murphy, they tried for a couple years to get him to come back and host Saturday Night Live, and he wouldn't do it. After Best Defense crashed, he came back and did it because he was just like, I better make sure there's still something going on. And then around the same time is when Beverly Hills Cop comes out. And it is a star vehicle for Eddie Murphy. It is written with his personality is ingrained through that movie. And because of that, he's so likable. And it's still an action movie, and there's still moments that you're on the edge of your seat, but he explodes. And then everybody says, okay, this guy's a bankable star. So he follows it up with Golden Child. I want the nine. Right? And then it's Coming to America. And as Scott said, this was an Eddie Murphy vehicle from beginning to end. He made every decision about this movie. The company, the producers let him do that. He chose John Landis to direct, and even though we'll talk a little later, it didn't go well for their relationship. Right. But Landis had been coming off a couple of really bad bombs as well, and a lot of people didn't want him, but Eddie wanted him, and he got him. And it's John Landis' sensibility, Eddie Murphy's personality, Arsenio Hall teaming up as the perfect foil for Eddie Murphy. Right. This movie is pretty close to perfect, and it's mostly because of Eddie Murphy.
And speaking of Arsenio Hall, this such an interesting time in his career too when they made this movie.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So he's at the time he is had made a couple of comedy appearances. He'd been on Soul Train. He was the announcer for a show called Cornelius. For a show called Thick of the Night,
Okay.
starring, you youngins might know, Robin Thicke's dad, Alan Thicke. Older dad, I hope so.
You guys don't remember Alan Thicke's talk show?
I do,
really.
but he does not at all.
You remember,
it was huge.
Listen, back in the mid to late 80s to mid to late 90s, there were about 78 different talk shows. They tried to give everybody a late night talk show. Alan Thicke was one of them, and it was very Canadian.
Yeah, well, and it becomes the Late Show. Eventually, Arsenio Hall starts to host. It doesn't actually go well for him, but then, it doesn't go poorly, but it's not the breakout that becomes the Arsenio Hall show, which he does for years and years. Before the Arsenio Hall show, which came after Coming to America. So yet again, he does Coming to America. He's exactly the same. He goes into it not with no street cred, not the same as Eddie Murphy or John Landis, but he does whatever is required of him. He plays multiple characters. He's subservient. He's all those things in this pitch perfect comedy way, and he shows his chops in this movie in exactly the same way. Especially there's moments where he's completely subservient because that is his upbringing from Zamunda. But then there's also when he ditches and he's going to spend the whole night in the hot tub kind of thing. He's like, dude, I need to get mine when I can, and he does all of that also pitch perfectly without being denigrating or rude, because he's a servant, right? So in the moments where he's being served, he could be rude. That would be perfectly acceptable. We see that in movies all the time.
Right.
And yet he doesn't do that, and it raises his star too. And he goes on to do the Arsenio Hall show, which is famous for a million reasons, including one of the very first times that you get a president in this case, but a politician being human, which is when Bill Clinton plays the saxophone on screen.
About that.
And that was Arsenio Hall's idea. We know exactly who you are, and we have 10,000 different outlets telling us what your presidential perspective is, but nobody's telling me if you can play the sax. And he does it, and it really changes the landscape of how you interact with politicians.
I think the success of this movie and how good Arsenio Hall is in this movie, I bet it led directly to the meetings that led to the Arsenio Hall.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it had to. He was huge because of this movie.
He was this was the height of his star power, but it was a huge amount of star power at the time he got that show. And then he kicked ass on the show, too. His show, for a little while, his show crushed.
And for Arsenio Hall, different than John Landis and some of the other folks we'll talk about, this was a huge star-making moment super early in his career. A little tongue-in-cheek, like Scott mentioned, he wrote the script this week, and he said, other than Amazon Women on the Moon, in which Arsenio Hall was the hallway apartment victim, Coming to America might have been his breakout moment, which kudos to you. That's perfect.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I would like to retract my last statement. It was obviously apartment hall guy. That's what got him the Arsenio Hall show. I apologize.
And then there was someone who did not need a breakout moment, and that I consider the third lead of this movie. That, of course, is Mr. James Earl Jones.
So good.
He already a star. For gentlemen of Robin Mai's age, James Earl Jones as Thulsa Doom in Conan is just straight friggin' royalty.
There's so many
forever,
notes.
and that's before he's friggin' Darth friggin' Vader.
Before he's Darth Vader, it's before he's in Field of Dreams, which also matters. There's so many moments that shape. And speaking of King, he's a king several times.
He's been a king. He's been a king several times. That's right. He was Thulsa and Conan. Of course, he's been the only voice of Vader so far. He had done dozens of movies and TV. And if you're looking for a man with the regal voice to play King Jofur, that's him. Although Sidney Poitier was considered for the role.
Yeah, but which I can totally understand.
Mr. Jones has been around so long. Here's a picture of Mr. Jones on the screen. For those of you listening in the podcast, you can't see it. But here he is as Dr. Jim Frazier number 2 on The Guiding Light in 1966. 1966. And
Where the hell did you find that?
He wasn't even the first guy to play the role.
He's like tiny James Earl Jones then. He's like, hi, sweet tiny James Earl Jones. This is what
actors have to do. They got to find that role. Did I have the really young picture of him? And then here's a picture of Mr. James Earl Jones just as a young badass
just an absolute
mofo.
Beast.
Just a beast. And then we finish up with him. Of course, he was, where did I lost it. Yes, he was Mufasa in The Lion King. Interesting enough, he is not the only person from Coming to America to go on and play Lion King royalty.
I love this so much.
It is also that the Queen of Zamunda Madge Sinclair voiced Mufasa's mate Sabari in The Lion King as well.
And that, of course, was absolutely intentional and fantastic.
And then we go on to...
Clever.
It's so clever,
right?
yeah. So smart.
One of the greatest comedy directors of all time. Rob, tell us about Mr. John Landis.
I mean, John Landis, you want to talk about some of the greatest comedies of all time. Just go through John Landis's IMDb page, right? I mean, we're talking about Animal House, Blues Brothers.
Oh, my God.
The comedy version of a horror movie, An American Werewolf in London, Trading Places, which he did with Murphy, and they did such a great job in that. Another one that really helped launch Eddie Murphy. He directs Michael Jackson's Thriller video, which, remember, was like,
it was huge.
30-minute video, right?
Huge.
And everybody watched it. Everybody, if you were alive at that time, you were up at midnight on that Friday night and watched the world premiere on MTV.
And if you were too young, you had to beg your parents to make sure you had cable to get MTV so you didn't miss it.
That video changed entertainment forever.
Yeah. Well, and it was at the height of MTV's platform as a music video platform too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, he does Three Amigos, and then he has a couple of really bad movies that did poorly. And so when Eddie Murphy says, I want John Landis on this movie, the production company said, I don't think John Landis is what he used to be. I think we should go in a different direction. And Eddie really had to sell Landis and basically said, no, John Landis is directing this movie. And that's how he got the role. And it really, they had gotten along so well during Trading Places. But what had happened in the meantime, as we have talked about, how Eddie Murphy became the king of comedy in the 80s. Well, Eddie Murphy's ego had also realized that Murphy was the king of comedy. And he had a huge entourage, and he had all these crazy things on his rider that he had to have available to him at all times. Like he had to have food deliveries. He had to have a driver 24/7. He had to have all this stuff. And John Landis has come out since and said, Eddie Murphy was kind of a dick during that movie. He was, his own farts did not smell apparently to Eddie Murphy because at this point, and they had huge ego problems, and yet none of it showed on the screen.
That's true.
I mean, you would not know that there was turmoil between the star and the driving force of this movie and his hand-picked director. You would have no idea. And essentially, Eddie afterwards said, I'm never working with John Landis again.
Yep.
Until a few years later when Eddie wasn't doing so well, and then he worked with John Landis again.
But I have to say, this is one of my favorite things. If you look at John Landis's career independent of Eddie Murphy, and then you do the same thing for Eddie Murphy, independent of John Landis or any director, you see that both of those artists, both of those makers, both of those creators, they are very, very invested in how their product looks. So I kind of I hate that they clashed on such a perfect project, because that's the one thing that's not perfect about it. But I love that they're also, especially for Eddie Murphy, who goes on to talk about the years of his ego hubris later in his career.
Oh yeah, he admits it.
Absolutely. And so it's lovely that they were able, as creators and makers who are so dedicated, to see that part of each other 4 years later for Beverly Hills Cop 2 and be like, all right, no, I know that I was kind of a giant dick, but I still need you to do this with me or it's not going to go well. That kind of thing.
I hooked you up, you hooked me up. Help me out.
Yeah, you helped get the best out of my performances, and I think we can do that again.
Yeah, and I really have a lot of love for that.
Set their egos aside. Yeah.
As big of a fan of Eddie Murphy as I am, this was his pinnacle as an actor in the kind of movies that he does. This is his best movie. He plays that role so perfectly as the vulnerable, introspective, yet incredibly rich. I could be such an asshole because I have all this power, and yet he's not. He treats everybody fairly, everybody kindly. He's very funny. He's self-deprecating, and you got to think John Landis is part of that performance.
Well, and I will argue that that's absolutely true, and maybe not necessarily the performance, yes, not the script, which is all Eddie Murphy, but we see it again in Beverly Hills Cop. We see the same thing happen, where Axel in Beverly Hills Cop isn't, so apple-polished, shiny as Prince Akeem is, but he is a person who has a lot of personal accountability, a lot of personal responsibility, and doesn't throw a lot of people under the bus who don't deserve being thrown under the bus.
The thing about Eddie Murphy in this movie and other movies is the guy is so friggin' likable. Like, you can't watch him be on the screen and be like, God, I'd love to have a beer with that guy. He's just so friggin' likable.
When you think about how invested Eddie Murphy was in the scripts for both of those movies, and then the fact that John Landis accepted the directorial job for both of those movies, you realize that one of the things Landis can do is let Eddie Murphy be Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, he's good at that.
As long as that doesn't take away from the script or the movie, which I love.
And then we
I like something, Scotty, before we move on here,
Hit me.
something you said really struck me, because also the physical affectations that you get from Akeem, even when he is a lowly mop boy, you know what I mean? Like he's sitting in a plastic molded chair in the middle of McDowell's, and yet he still sits like a king would sit, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to sit on a swing behind McDowell's house, and he can't quite sit right until he puts his hand up on the chain and puffs his chest out like he's holding a spear or something. And then it's just like, yes, that's how a king would sit. And yet he has all these physical affectations, even when he's trying to hide it, when he's being the lowly mop boy during his character. He can't hide it because that's just who he is. And the fact that, I don't know if it was Eddie that came up with that, or if it was Landis or some combination thereof, his physical affectations through the entire movie are exactly what someone raised as a prince who's about to become a king, how he would act.
And as we're raving about the cast, there's a couple of cast members that some of you may not know about that are absolute Hollywood royalty. And A's going to tell us about
a crew member.
Crew member.
Yeah, crew member.
A's going to tell us about Deborah Naduliman.
Yeah, Deborah Naduliman is the costumer on this.
The costumes are so good in
Either
this.
and
Incredible.
they're so and one of the beautiful things about Deborah Naduliman, who is also Deborah Naduliman Landis, she eventually marries John Landis. In American cinema,
I honestly did not know that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah. In American cinema, she has made so many things that you understand as iconic for American cinema, and they all look like sort of last minute decisions, no big deal decisions.
Yeah.
Things like she designs Indiana Jones fedora and leather jacket and whip. She designs John Belushi's college T-shirt that says "college." She does that. She also works with her now husband John Landis in the Blues Brothers, in Animal House, in the Three Amigos. So tell me what you know about those movies from a costume perspective.
They're
Animal
iconic.
House, done. Blues Brothers,
Done.
done.
The visual of the Blues Brothers has endured for 40 years.
Yeah.
It
Also, the
seems so
Three Amigos.
simple.
You know one thing about the Three Amigos, which are their mariachi outfits and those three white dudes,
genius.
right? Like
She's
that's
a
what you
genius.
know. And so she
And
does.
how about the red leather jacket in the
Thriller,
video,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. She does all of
that's
that.
right.
She currently is the chair of the costuming in cinema chair at USC in California, and she's a professor.
Very cool.
And she's actually about to open, as soon as we're allowed to open things, a perspective on making people into iconic characters by costume.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I want to do
I would
that.
love to see that.
I want to see that.
That is a slightly larger university than the University of the United States. I'd like to point that out.
And now we will talk about someone. I have an enormous amount of hubris, as Rob is known for many, many years, and my wife is known for many, many years. I pretty much think I can do everything better than everybody else. It's just
except for flowers and hearts and stuff.
Yeah, any emotional stuff I can't do, but if it's
But
entertainment,
he meant
No, not
important stuff,
emotional
eh?
stuff.
Oh,
You can do a lot of emotional
Okay.
stuff really well.
I
Like
I can. Yes,
oh
I can.
my gosh, I've never met a girl as special as you. That's not so
That's
much
not
for
my
you.
jam.
You
That's
can
not
do
my
it.
jam.
You can do it if that person is evil. You're like, no, Alice, you're my favorite. No, trust me, I'm a doctor. You're my
We'll
favorite.
be together forever.
It's just the non-confrontational hearts
But
and flowers that
there's
maybe not so
one
much.
area of movies in which I am nothing but a fanboy. Obviously, if I see any script, I'm like, in my head, in my messed up head, I could have done this part of that script better. I could have read that book better. I could have done all these things better. Acting, even like I could have coached that better, directed better. There's one area I have no fucking clue in, and that is special effects and makeup. And one of the all-time kings of, give me this back here. Boop. We have Rick Baker. People may not realize this. Rick Baker, the Academy Award-winning makeup artist for An American Werewolf in London, Harry and the Hendersons, Men in Black, The Wolfman, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Five Academy Awards, did the makeup for Coming to America, and it's pretty friggin' spectacular. And there's Baker and Eddie Murphy as Saul.
What's wonderful about this is
So great.
you know that Rick Baker is not necessarily part of that Brooklyn barbershop.
Yeah.
But the other two Jews could totally be there. Like they could totally have been just normal part of that barbershop in, Brooklyn Heights or whatever. John
That's
Landis is
also
like,
something
can
that
you
Scott
clean
could
this
do
up a
well.
little?
I'm just saying.
I could pass for a crusty Jewish dude in a barbershop. I'm sure I could. And the incredible makeup of Saul is based on
It's
Rick
beautiful.
Baker's father-in-law, Nestor Abascal. And I tried to find a picture of Nestor for the video part of this. Could not find one. But of course, this man is just incredible. And the makeup, 2 points about the makeup was so good. Why the makeup was so good for Saul. The makeup was so good that Eddie Murphy was so delighted with it. He would get in a golf cart, drive around the movie lot at Paramount Studios, get out,
Really?
walk up to people and say, "I'm Eddie Murphy," in his real voice and talk like him, and no one believed him.
They'd be like, security, can you get this demented old man,
Everyone
Who's
was
please?
this
like-
crazy old Jewish man pretending to
This
talk
old
like
Jewish
Eddie Murphy?
man has the best Eddie Murphy impression I've ever heard in my life. Wow, it's incredible. It's incredible. And that is Rick Baker's
So can you
skill.
go back to the photo that you just had up there for Rick Baker? We've
one?
seen this a few times, and we'll see it again. We talked about this with Tom Savini in From Dusk Till Dawn as well. One of my favorite things about special effects makeup artists that use material effects, real effects, like Rick Baker, like Tom Savini, like Stan Winston. There's always a photo like this. It also is true for Guillermo del Toro. There's a photo like this of him with these hideous things around him, and he's smiling to beat the band.
Smiling.
Like he can't be happier because
Here to
those are
here.
his creations. And I'm like, if I were right where Rick Baker was in this photo, I would literally pee my pants and pass out. Like that's what would happen to me with all those things around me, I think, if I thought they were real.
And then we've got, so let's see. So we've covered the Rick Baker stuff, which is super fun. And now we're going to go to this neat thing about some of the connections and the cameos in this.
Yeah.
Which
so
are
many.
just, there is some star power that was not stars yet. when they
Well,
started
and
on this.
this is also something to be said about Eddie Murphy and John Landis's ability to see their own, to smell their own in
they
Hollywood,
clearly smell talent.
right, because they're going to focus on things that 30 years later we're still interested in, and they knew it then.
And you would think that Landis, you get as a director, you want the best product on the screen. But a guy of Eddie Murphy's stature and status at the time might be intimidated by young up-and-comers, other people who might steal the stage from him. It doesn't seem to be the case. He seems to want
And he
want
talks
people
about
up there.
he literally talks about that before while you're queuing this up. He talks about that again later in his life when he's talking about how he became and stayed Eddie Murphy. He sort of talks about, especially with his relationship with Richard Pryor, the idea of standing on the shoulders of giants and the obligation he has to recognize the reason he was able to be as funny as he was is that he learned from the masters. And I think that the Don Amici, especially, like those scenes, I think are an homage, saying thank you for being part of my upbringing and my career making and all that other stuff too.
And we go back into actors. And now, speaking of Don Amici, Rob, tell us tell us about. Rob and I saw both of these movies in the theater together,
Yep.
and then probably 100 times on VHS. And these guys were killed. Rob, tell us about this connection.
I'm going to say probably twice in
Don
the theater.
Amici
Probably.
and Ralph Bellamy. It was the Dukes. It was the Dukes. They play Randolph and Mortimer Duke in Trading Places, who are the main antagonists, right? And it's just a little throwaway. After Semi gets all this money and is spending it not wisely because Akeem wants everyone to think he's poor so that someone will fall in love with him for who he is, not what he has. So he has this huge wad of money, puts it in a McDowell's bag and hands it to two bums on the sidewalk. And then the bums show their faces. And at the end of Trading Places, the Duke brothers went broke because of what Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd did to them. And now they have this huge wad of money, and they we're back, Mortimer, we're back,
Mortimer.
right? And they bang on the window. They say, "Thank you, let's do lunch." Right? And it's just like this little call to say, "Hey, we loved that movie as much as everyone watching this movie did, and now we just put them in the same universe, and that's pretty darn cool." So the shared universe between Trading Spaces and I said Trading Spaces. That's the show on HGTV.
But we were with
Places and coming to America is cool because now all that stuff lives in the same universe, and that's kind of cool to think about.
And they even brought him back in a way for Coming to America. The sequel, Colin Jost is the I don't know, I'm racist interviewer in that one, and they show and he's a Duke, and it's just a really, really nice touch. And then there is this I did not know. Rob, you probably know this.
Oh, yes.
And I'm sure that Howard knows this, who's always in the chat room. I'd never heard of See You Next Wednesday. And I'm a huge John Landis fan. I met John Landis once. It's in my 3 famous people I've met that I just lost my shit.
Oh, I did the same thing. Yeah.
I never knew you met John Landis.
I met John Landis
awesome.
And thought I was, super. I'm suave. I'm cool. I'm right. I met John Landis and lost my shit. I was like, oh my God, you're John Landis, and you made that one movie. Animals was great. I wrote a book called Landis. You should take a look at it. He's just so awesome, John Landis. Oh my God.
That is a lot like.
But it's okay. It was only in front of like 300 very famous people that I did this shit.
I had a quite similar moment, not quite as loud, but we have a mutual friend, who you guys watching may know, the bad astronomer Phil Plait. For a while I worked with Phil Plait, and we were at a party, and John Landis was there, and Phil is such a good friend of mine. He knows what a big fan I am, and so he's like, "Hey, don't get excited." But John Landis.
He didn't tell me not to get excited.
No. Phil. Yeah, Phil says to me like, "Don't get excited." John Landis just came in, and he's walking right over here to say hello. And he walks up, and I turn around. So now it's Phil Plait and me here, and John Landis here, and I say, "Hi, you're John Landis." Like that.
So both of you's first thing to John Landis was to tell him he's John Landis?
Yes. But here's how lovely John Landis is, because Phil says she is super excited to get a chance to meet you. And he says, "That's wonderful. I am John Landis. Who are you, my dear?" Which is so lovely. Like, he could have just been like, "Yes, hi," and gone on to get, "Yes, hi, nice to meet you," and gone on to get a drink or whatever. Yeah. And he was like, "Yeah, but who are you, my dear? Because now we've told me I'm John Landis 3 times."
Oh my God.
So John Landis acknowledged the fact that you told him he was John Landis. I freaking love that guy even more now.
Yep. I'm getting the impression he hears that a lot, because with me, and I was slightly more energetic than he was. He just smiled and was patient and waited, and then asked a couple questions about me, and like, "So you write books? What kind of books you write?" Like, this dude is a pro.
He's an absolute mensch.
He really
is,
handling excited, awkward people, and he's very comfortable with the fact, I'm just a guy who makes movies, but some people lose their shit, and that's okay. And it was wonderful. It was
really fun.
But one of the things,
two things. I'm disappointed that I'm the only one of us who has never met John Landis, and 2, now I have to meet John Landis just to see if my initial reaction will be to tell him he's John Landis.
I think you're obligated to do that.
Like must happen all the time.
Yeah, if and when you do that. In fact, I think whenever Comic-Con comes back and is a thing, you need to come to California and come to Comic-Con with us.
We're bringing Rob's ass. Yeah. If Comic-Con starts
and you guys can just maraud around Comic-Con with a video camera, but we'll create the moment where you get to tell John Landis his name is John Landis.
So this is, as a creator myself who tries to connect everything, the Siglerverse, everything is connected. If I say it's a Siglerverse novel, it's from the World War II stories to the modern day stories to the 500 years from now the Crypt to the 700 years from now the GFL. It's all connected in different Easter egg ways. And as a huge John Landis fan, and as a creator who makes a lot of interconnected stuff, I had never heard about See You Next Wednesday. We're watching the movie, and I rewatch the movies together before every StorySmack. And we get to this part where See You Next Wednesday, they're in a subway
station, yeah.
And
like
I will not lie, and I have both seen this movie probably 20 times. We're well in the bag by the time this comes around. We're like, it's been a hard week. We're gonna have a few cocktails, watch a movie, have a good time. This comes up, and I notice that in the background, this space movie called See You Next Wednesday has the name Dan Aykroyd on it. I'm like, wait a minute. I know all the Dan Aykroyd movies. There's no Dan Aykroyd movie called See You Next Wednesday. So we pause the movie and we look it up, and this crap is crazy. So this is John Landis's running gag. If you've never heard of See You Next Wednesday, look it up, Google it, or go to Wikipedia for it. It is in Michael Jackson's Thriller video. Mm-hmm. It is in everything John Landis has done one way or another. It's an American Werewolf in London. Mm-hmm. It is in all of his movies. It's either a movie billboard or a storefront or something like that. But it's sort of John Landis, his little way to say, like, hey, you crazy fans who tell me that I'm John Landis when you meet me, I get you. Here's all the connect. It's just one little thing.
And there's
for
a
people.
handful of folks who do this really well. I think, we've seen Stanley make sure he's in every single one of his movies. We have seen THX 1138 in a lot of Spielberg movies, things like that.
Yeah.
And those,
That's a good one.
Those are those little cogbacks. I know that this cast may have differing opinions on all of the filmography of M. Night Shyamalan, but he is also similarly injecting himself in a different way than Stephen King. Stephen King inserts himself only as Stephen King, like in that cameo as a writer. And I don't know that he always acquits himself well there, but it's always tiny if he does it. Unlike Stan Lee, who became a character as part of his whatever.
Stephen King's thing was to be a bit
character. Oh, yeah, no, and Nelson is right. I thought about that. It's George Lucas, not Steven Spielberg. Right. Okay. Thank you, Nelson.
And then, there's one more connection. This movie doesn't just have Landis connections, Eddie Murphy movie connections. It's got some old school Hollywood tips of the hat.
For sure. And Amy Reed points out Hitchcock did this a lot too, which of course he is the creator of this idea, and he did so well.
Yeah, the director making a cameo.
Exactly, yeah.
Every single Hitchcock movie has Hitchcock in it somewhere.
Right.
So the connection that Scott is talking about to movies in general, and specifically comedies in general, because this is, of course, the playground that Eddie Murphy grew up in. Mm-hmm. In the national anthem of Zamunda, which plays at the start of the birthday celebration, is the same melody as the national anthem of Fredonia in the Marx Brothers film Duck Soup, which was made in 1933.
But you think about the timeline.
For you.
1933, Eddie Murphy made Coming to America in 1988, and I think he was 28, he was, so you go back, Eddie Murphy is a kid in the 1980s, so like late 60s, early 70s.
When his parents loved Duck Soup.
When his parents loved Duck Soup, and he's watching all these replays and everything. He probably watched Duck Soup. And the Marx Brothers, if you guys don't know the Marx Brothers, they were kings. They were the kings of comedy in their era. They were titans. So of course every comedian, and Eddie Murphy, if you follow him at all, he's a student of the game. He studies everybody. He goes to work and he analyzes what everybody does to be funny, and then his effortless talent to make it look easy. So of course he's watched the Marx Brothers.
Well, and I think also this is one of the really, really wonderful things that Eddie Murphy has the career he deserves and has been working this whole time, is that he truly is not only a student of the game, but he considered himself part of this iconography, right? Like he didn't say like, I'm doing this as an homage. He's like, I am contributing to what 50 years from now people will talk about. And he's right.
He's fucking right.
He's right.
Yep.
All right, and then we got a couple more connections. Let's see where I got all excited. Rob, tell us, there are some great cameos that led to huge careers. Tell us about them.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about an Academy Award winner? How about Cuba Gooding Jr.? This is his first film role. He has the very pivotal part of boy getting haircut. So, I mean, listen, you want to talk about that as just a career launcher.
It was, though.
Boy getting haircut. Well, it was. That's true. And it's funny, years later, Cuba told the story that he actually left some of his performance, ended up on the cutting room floor. Because supposedly he tells Clarence the barber, hey, by the way, I don't have any money for this haircut. So Clarence takes his clippers and shaves a big streak down the middle of his head and then says, get the hell out of here kind of thing. But that all ended up on the cutting room floor.
I would have loved to see that.
Like in my brain, my 80s brain is imprinted that I've seen that clip somewhere at some point. I swear I've seen it somewhere. I don't know if
I think that's the Mandela effect, man. I'm not sure it exists anywhere.
But it wasn't just him. Go ahead, Rob.
So the robber who sticks up McDowell's and has some foul language, surprisingly, was the heavenly mouthed Samuel L. Jackson, who, yes, he, believe it or not, he said some bad words in this movie.
He did. He yelled, and he yelled.
Yes. I'm glad he's gotten away from that. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about if we're talking about dollars in movies that someone's appeared in, Samuel L. Jackson is the most successful actor in the history of the world. His movies have grossed more money than anyone ever in the history of anything. And he's just he's got a 2-minute scene. Akeem kicks his butt, and I believe Semi calls him some sort of rhinoceros testicle droppings or something like that.
Disease.
Yeah. So,
but I mean, Star Wars. He's in Star Wars movies. He's in Avengers. Yep. So right out the gate, he's way ahead. So he is the biggest box office star of all time.
All time.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yep.
And then we got two more, Rob, I think. We got this
couple
lovely
more.
human.
Garcelle Beauvais who is an actress, and she has been in a lot of movies. She is in a lot of series. Right now, she's in a series on, I believe it's Showtime. Whatever, but she has become a big actress. She was just one of the Rose Bears, one of the one throwing the rose petals around. That's our Garcelle. And director Tobe Hooper, who directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Unfortunately, no longer with us, but he has a quick word at the McDowell's party when he's talking to Arsenio Hall when he's playing the Reverend. Quick couple of words, and then he walks off. But that's Tobe Hooper. Like John Landis probably like, hey, Toby, we're doing this party scene. You want to come on by? Sure, why not? So there you go.
And of course, now I assume Tobe Hooper doesn't sound Jewish. I'm assuming he's Jewish. Like, sure, I'll come down. That'll be fine. Will there be a craft services table, perhaps? Something to nosh on a little bit before the scene.
Nosh. That's well played, sir.
Thank you very much. Now that is our wonderful coverage of the cast. That was very fun. Now we're going to go into some general notes. We have 15 minutes left in the show. AK, any other key points?
So I really love, Robbie brought it up earlier in the beginning of the show. One of the notes that came back from the studio was that there were no white people in the movie.
Shocker.
And, I
would like to point out that Saul was a white guy. I'm just saying.
Exactly. But also, now, like, that's an interesting thing because we are in recent years asking, like, cool, like, is this entire cast the same race? Because that doesn't look like people look in the real world. But back then, whole cast, no white people. So Eddie Murphy was like, all right, well, to get it done, I got to put a white person in there. He says he thinks of the funniest somebody white is what the studio needs. And he starts to think about people who would fit. And the funniest one of white people he knows is Louis Anderson, which is how Louis Anderson ends up at McDowell's, which is, I think, terrific casting because he's precisely who I would be if I worked at McDowell's.
Yeah, exactly right.
So I love that one. We had to have Anderson is in the original Coming to America because the whole cast was black and the studio's like, I have to have somebody white in it. And so Eddie Murphy's like, who's the funniest white guy around? And also a friend of mine I can ask to be in the movie. And Louis in the movie.
Going back to since we're on the Jewish tip, I would love to think there was some movie producers like, Bubala, Eddie, love it. The movie's fantastic. We're going to make it. You got to put a white guy in it. How's it going to sell in Peoria if I don't have a white guy? Just find a white guy. Well,
and Julaine points out that the Duke brothers are in it eventually, as white dudes. Yep. But they are here and there characters.
Rob, what are some other key points you love from that?
Well, it's something that we saw from Eddie Murphy a number of times, but this is the first time he did it, playing multiple characters in the same movie. I mean, we eventually see it in Norbit, Nutty Professor. He goes, Hercules.
Oh, Jesus, incredible. Incredible.
Vampire in Brooklyn over and over and over again. So he obviously plays Hakeem. He plays Clarence the Barber. He is Randy Watson. You recognize him from the What's Going Down episode of That's My Mama, from Sterling Heights' own Randy Watson. That boy's good. That boy can sing. And 1, 2, 3, what am I missing? Oh, Saul. Of course, he plays Saul with all the makeup on. And he tells the joke at the end. So, yeah, it's
shoot. Okay, go ahead, Rob.
Impressive that we see the range of Eddie Murphy in one movie, and then something that probably every comedy series said after that, hey, can you play about half dozen parts? Because that will cost us a lot less money.
And it was just so... remember, we saw this in the theater, and that was something that was not done at the time. And even a little bit with Saul, which was so good, they give him the cutscene at the end. Mm-hmm. So I say to the waiter, try the soup. And it blew us all away that it was so, it wasn't that he couldn't do it. I'd seen, Rob and I watched every stand-up comedian there was back in the day. Mm-hmm. They all had different voices. They all had different characters. There were a lot of guys who could do this. It was the fact that Eddie Murphy was able to do it, was able to tell the story like, I'm going to do this. Because they said, no, we're going to get actors for that. And then finally it's like, we're going to do it this way.
Well, and even so, like you see Tyler Perry do this a whole lot now. And we saw Martin Lawrence do it a little bit, right? But Tyler Perry had to make his own movie studio to do it.
Yep.
So Eddie Murphy back in the day was like, nope, still doing all these characters.
And Amy Reed brings up a great point, which is my favorite little known fact about it is Paula Abdul choreographed the opening dance scene in Zamunda. And I have a lot of respect for people with just walk in there with huge cojones and lie their way to success. John Landis wanted a choreographer that had worked with Janet Jackson. He was surprised when she turned out to be an 18-year-old Laker girl. He asked Paula if she knew anything about African dancing, and she said, "Yes, of course I do." She did not. She knew nothing about African dancing, and then she had to learn about African dancing and then came up with that incredible, we'll just switch over to the open real quick, which does have some of the dancing in it. This dance scene, well, I apparently have screwed that up, so we're going to go back to this guest scene. But yes, Paula Abdul, who has been an enduring commodity in the entertainment space, was it for 30 years now? 98, 2008? Over 30 years. So even Paula Abdul is involved in all the incredible talent that brought this movie to fruition.
There's another James Earl Jones connection.
Okay.
King Jaffe comes when he arrives in Queens. He says, and is going to confront his son for having run away and run away from the elopement. He says, "No, do not alert him to my presence. I shall deal with him myself," which is very familiar if you've seen his Darth Vader, where he says in Return of the Jedi, states, "No, leave them to me. I will deal with them myself." Thank you, Rob, for the sound effects.
Right? I mean, that is
it's incredible. It's incredible.
That's perfect. I love it.
One other little note, and then we'll let Rob pick a note, and we'll finish this show up, is there's the great scene where McDowell's, the guy from McDonald's shows up, McDonald's photographer shows up, threatens a lawsuit. And of course, that's a very funny bit. It plays very, very well. But they made the McDowells look so real that an actual manager from an actual local McDonald's turned up with his lawyer saying they were going to sue the movie and sue Eddie Murphy for every penny he had. So this fake
they thought it was a real restaurant.
They thought it was a real restaurant. This fake scene they wrote into the movie to make fun of a parody on McDonald's and the guys ripping them off was so realistic that an actual McDonald's guy showed up and threatened to sue them for ripping off McDonald's. I love that.
Love it. It's perfect. And that leads us to John Amos, who we haven't talked about yet. But John Amos,
so
who plays
talented.
Cleo McDowell, who's the patriarch. And it's really interesting to watch. He originally doesn't want his daughter dating Akeem because he thinks he's a lowly goat farmer. And then when the king of Zamunda shows up and doesn't want his son dating a lowly daughter of some guy that owns a fast food joint, it's like everything gets flipped on him. And then it's kind of cool to see. But John Amos, who of course was hugely famous for why am I having
What's Happening?
Trouble? Yes, thank you very much for Good Times, right?
Oh, Good Times. Yes, not What's
I
Happening.
forgot about that. Jesus.
Yeah, exactly right. But when he was a kid, he worked at the very first McDonald's in Canada. In 1971, before he was on Good Times, he was in a very famous national singing McDonald's ad.
Okay.
Where, part of it was grab a bucket, grab a mop. Right. Which is funny because he's watching Akeem not know how to work a mop. So that's even kind of a little thing there. And of course, the guys in the shop call Akeem Kunta Kinte. And John Amos played the adult grown-up Kunta Kinte in the very huge television miniseries of Roots.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Huge. If you guys have never seen Roots, it's upsetting. But
I was about to
incredible.
say, it is absolutely just as much worth watching, if not more, than Coming to America, and not nearly as fun.
Yeah. So it's Amos had a lot of connections.
Worth
so that was pretty
doing,
clever.
hard to do. You should do it.
I'll make a quote block for you, that Coming to America and Roots are both excellent productions, but Coming to America is a bit more fun.
Slightly more fun, yes.
I'm just trying to say, as much as we're saying you should watch Coming to America, we're saying you should watch Roots too, but just don't expect it to be Coming to America.
Now, here's the thing that I had not learned until Rob let me know is at the time of the movie's release, filmmaker and writer Art Buchwald accused Murphy of lifting the idea from a story from a treatment he did in 1982. And Buchwald sued. Buchwald versus Paramount in 1982. The writer said the idea was taken from a script he had been developing, calling It's a Crude, Crude World, later renamed King for a Day, that was mired in production difficulties. Buchwald won the lawsuit, except a settlement from Paramount reportedly for $900,000, which, as we've covered the box office for this, that stings, but it don't sting all that bad.
Yeah, and he accused Murphy, but when the lawsuit came out, he actually sued Paramount because Paramount was the one who would have had the access to his treatment, and it's Paramount who decided, like, let's just get on with this and be done with this.
Just pay this bastard and let's move on printing money all day long.
Yeah, and it might not have even.
Despite all that, Eddie Murphy is still listed as the sole writer on this movie. So Buchwald didn't even get a credit, and he doesn't get any points after the fact or any of that. He got a one-time payment, and Eddie Murphy still officially wrote this movie.
Well, hopefully he took his one-time payment and cried all the way to the bank.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, I'm not sure if it was like, let's just pay this bastard off. It might have been like, cool, we don't have the time to deal with this. He knows he's got a case. What do you want? Like, if we're going to draw this out, you're not going to get a credit anyway. Let's just pay you a little money. We appreciate your work. We want to work with you again in the future, which they go on to do.
Do they really?
Of course they do. Yeah. Art Buchwald is hugely made in Hollywood.
That's. I didn't know that. I'll have to look that up. That's fabulous.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but he's a huge made man, so I'm sure they worked with him.
Because in my mind, all Hollywood litigious engagements wind up with a severed horse head in a bed. All of them. There's no coming back from a lawsuit in Hollywood. You sue, you fight, you hire someone to cut someone's fingers off, and that is that. Rob, any last point?
You've watched too many movies, Scott. That's pretty obvious.
Fabulous.
Listen, I want to end with the last thing on our list here because Coming to America was so beloved, especially in the hip hop community.
Totally.
I mean, there have been artists year after year after year that pay tribute to this impact of the movie, either, in their videos, mentions, drops, samples, all this kind of stuff. We're talking Busta Rhymes, Ludacris, Snoop Dogg, Tech Nine. These are all artists who have done it, but the best is Kanye, right? There's that scene where Louis Anderson is talking to the guys and he's saying, right now I'm washing lettuce. I used to mop the floors like you guys. And next week I'll be on the fries. And then after that, in 2 years of hard work, I'll be the assistant manager. And that's where the big bucks are. But Kanye's got a line in his song Gold Digger. Let's see. He got that ambition, baby. Look in his eyes. Last week it was the mop. Next week it's the fries. I mean, come on.
Shoot. What happened?
Boom.
We missed the end of his rap.
Did you really?
Dare you
cut off my Kanye?
No, well, just the part.
I was also calling up Rob, and that legacy of hip hop influences endured. Action Bronson's song "Baby Blue," which I stumbled across one day a couple of years ago. It does the whole restaurant scene with Samuel L. Jackson. That's the whole backdrop for the video. With Action Bronson being Akeem. It's fantastic, and that song is not. It's more recent, but just continues.
And there's
a movie from 30 plus years ago,
it's incredible.
Right? I mean, that's great.
Go, babe.
I was just going to say, I find Eddie Murphy such a wonderful success story because he is such an incredible talent and such a unique maker kind of in his head. He dreams up the craziest things. But I will say, Hollywood has this history of ignoring the huge amount of hard work it makes to make a good comedy. Comedies are a lot harder to win Oscars for. Comedic performances that are pitch perfect are impossible to win Oscars for, really.
Yeah. Good point.
And yet, if you think of really iconic Black artists who make multiple movies and have multiple iterations of their career, they almost always look like this, right? Key and Peele start with comedy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they do a lot of comedy really, really, really well. And then they move into something else. Martin Lawrence hasn't done this, but he did go from comedy on TV, ensemble comedy on TV, to lots of star running or star powered one-star TV or movie roles. Mm-hmm. We see
Will
Smith do this. We see this over and over again. You have to start, like, I don't know, I'm not saying it has to be that way, but we find like really
Jamie
creative,
Foxx.
Beautiful makers who happen to be Black men or women tend, if they start in comedy, can be taken more seriously as they move forward, because when you look back at this 40 years later, it's perfect. Mm-hmm. It's so good, which means the only way it was so good is that everybody was paying attention back then too. And a lot of times people, and good for them, people luck in because they're young and they're pretty or they're whatever, they get a role that makes them famous. Mm-hmm. We see that happen with Eddie Murphy this way, and I love that, and I hope that continues.
Yeah, I hope so.
A really good thing.
So. It's gone on. Kevin Hart's another one, moving
exactly,
on to other roles. Who's
but
currently, Kevin Hart is today's Eddie Murphy, right?
Yeah, you start with this pitch perfect comedy, and then you move on to other things. And I don't think you have to do that, but if it works, we still get the pitch perfect comedy at the end.
It's definitely a route in for certain actors and actresses that if you come in and you just crush on the comedy front, you stand up or sitcoms, etc., then move up to a comedy movie. And as the comedy movies do well, then you have a platform which you can go, now I want to do something serious. Now I want to do something maudlin. Now I want to do a higher level comedy, like The World Is Your Oyster once you've established in comedy.
And it's such an interesting thing because it makes, if you accept that a powerfully built, fit Black actor will be looked at as potentially aggressive before they will be funny, and then they come out and are extraordinarily funny and good at it, then they still look powerful and potentially threatening, but they get all of it, and they don't have to fight for that too.
Yep.
Anyhow, I think
just think of Scott Sigler, who started off writing dirty limericks, and look at him now.
Still writing dirty limericks.
Writing dirty limericks. Yes.
Frightening and giantly powerful as well. Yes, I am.
So I think that wraps it up for us today. We did miss StorySmack last week. We're making this up to you this week because we had plumbing issues at the Lair of Doom. So we are going to actually have another StorySmack to get back on track next Saturday. We told you guys that was going to be Boogie Nights if you listened to the last Sigler in Place. However, it turns out that we are changing our mind and we're going to do Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure because
this StorySmack was StorySmack number 68.
Yes.
Which makes the next StorySmack, what is the number?
69, dudes! And I originally was going to do, of course, Boogie Nights. Yeah. And then I was talking about it. I do coffee with the FTO when I walk the dogs in the morning on Facebook. Do a little Facebook Live, just chit chat for a couple of minutes, no big deal. And I mentioned that we're gonna do Boogie Nights episode 69. And somebody, now I can't remember in the comments who said, is like, "Wow, sad you didn't do Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure." Next return, 69 dudes. I'm like, God damn it! And then literally today, that was still stuck in my head. So I texted Rob and A and said, "Can we do Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?" And they're all good to go. So Rob, thank you so much for being on. As usual, always. You always bring the knowledge heat. As the Duke of Western Zamunda, we thank you. And Professor, thank you very much.
And we will see you next Saturday.
Listen, trust this guy, Rob Otto. He knows what he's talking about. And don't forget to wind your watch.
There we go. All right, and now we say
thank you so much,
good day, Rob, and we go back to Maine, and now it's just you and me, baby girl. Here we go.
All right. Well, we are running a little bit late, so we're going to wrap this up. That was episode 68 of StorySmack. You can find Scott and I online. Scott is at Scott Sigler on Twitter and Instagram, and his Facebook page is facebook.com/Scott Sigler. I am at @ARealGirl on Twitter and at a.real.girl on Instagram.
Hold on. I think I've actually screwed this up. There we go. Is that right? Nope. Back. We just showed Rob again. Hold on. Let's go here in studio mode. There we go. God damn it.
Glad I stopped picking my nose.
There it is.
There we go.
We were trying to be all professional. And as you guys have noticed, if you watch Sigler in Place every Wednesday, I have a difficult time with the closing of all of these shows. So you can find us online at facebook.com/StorySmack. We live stream StorySmack every other Saturday at facebook.com/Scott Sigler, twitch.tv/Scott Sigler, and youtube.com/Scott Sigler.
In addition to StorySmack, we also do a once weekly live stream, as Scott mentioned, called Sigler in Place. It is on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. right here where you watched this.
And we release an unabridged episode of a serialized novel of mine every week. You can get episodes for free every Sunday via iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more. Just go to scottsigler.com/subscribe for links.
We hope that you subscribe so that you can hear Scott's books and more StorySmack goodness in the future.
Until the next episode,
we'll talk to you all
real soon. Goodbye. This is a sing. Goodbye.